Hello everyone, my name's Lachie. I am the trainer here at Veneziano Coffee in Richmond. I've been a barista for 14 years and for the last few years been moving into the training space here for Veneziano. You may have received a Breville machine as a gift for Father's Day, and we're here today to explore the range of machines from Breville. Today we have our Oracle Jet, our Barista Impress, and finally our Barista Express as well. Today we're going to be exploring our range of espresso machines from automatic through to manual, and learning the different ways of making amazing coffee in all of them. Veneziano has been a roaster now for nearly 22 years, specializing in specialty coffee. Today we'll be using the blend Elevate, which is a 50-50 blend of Brazil and Colombia. It's a very coffee tasting coffee. Think chocolate, nuts, and caramel. We also have Crave, which is a slightly more intense version, a lot more dark chocolate, a lot more nuts. We also have Soar, which is our fruity seasonal blend, which changes components several times a year. And finally, Aspire, our fair trade and organic blend. So aside from our usual lineup of blends, we also have special releases that we provide a few times a year that feature coffees that are slightly more interesting and elevated than our usual blends. The Winter Warmer here tastes like Rocky Road in a cup. Outside of our blends, we also offer a range of single origins that'll change every few months. So right here, we have a coffee from Timor-Leste, which is in fact the 4th year in a row that we've bought this coffee. It's very, very special to us. And a coffee from Burundi as well. Feel free to get different blends to highlight different flavor profiles and explore the wild world of specialty coffee through single origins as well. So what is specialty coffee? Technically speaking, specialty coffee are coffees that are scored 80 points and above by certified Q graders. These are the coffee equivalent of sommeliers in wine. In a slightly more looser term, specialty coffee is about the exploration of excellence in coffee. The specialty coffee industry is ever evolving. There is a lot of experimentation being done at the farm level. Roasting is getting better and better, and baristas are getting better and better as well. It is becoming easier and easier to make excellent coffee, not just in cafes, but at home as well. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. When choosing coffee to buy at home, it is best to support your local cafes and local roasteries. If you go to a cafe and you really love their coffee, ask them what blends they use, ask them which roasteries they're coming from, and pick those coffees for yourself at home. Or jump onto beans.com.au and select from one of the many different blends available. Today we're going to be using Veneziano's blend Elevate, which is a 50-50 blend of Brazil and Colombia. Really, really lovely milk chocolate flavors, a very soft sort of cashew, and a whole bunch of caramel. One really important thing to pay attention to is the roast date of your coffee. On the back of this bag here, we have a sticker which indicates the date that this coffee was roasted in our roastery right here in Richmond. It is always great to have a really, really fresh roast date. We would recommend no more than 3 to 4 weeks old. This coffee generally tastes best at about week 2, so if you get it when it's really fresh, by the time you start using it and by the time you finish up the bag, you should be pretty much hitting the peak flavor. It's best to use whole bean coffee, which is why we have grinders built in on our machines today. So let's get started. And I've got a little bit of coffee left over. What I can do is roll down the top and use the provided tin tie to secure it shut. We're trying to minimize as much oxygen inside this bag as possible to keep this coffee as fresh as possible for as long as possible. If you're using a kilogram bag, you can store your leftover coffee in the Breville Bean Keeper, which will come along with your Oracle machine in the Father's Day pack. Today we'll be using the Breville Oracle Jet, which is a very automatic machine. If you want your machine to make your coffee for you, this is the one to get. Over here we have the Breville Impress Touch, which is a good middle ground between an automatic machine and the manual machine we're going to be using next. This also has assisted tamping. Over here we have the fully manual Barista Express. This is a fully manual machine, which means that you have full control over all of your variables so you can make the best coffee that you possibly can. So before we begin making espresso, let's start by talking about our variables. Our variables are the things that we can control and adjust and change to make our coffee taste better, maybe worse, hopefully better. Let's begin with our dose. The dose is the amount of coffee that we put into our portafilter. One of our machines, the Barista Express, we're going to be manually adjusting our dose. Our Barista Impress Touch and our Oracle, will control the dose for us very, very consistently, so it's something we don't have to worry about. Our dose is mostly controlled by the baskets that we're using. For today, we're going to be using our double shot baskets, and specifically the single wall variation. With your machines, you will receive 4 different baskets, 2 singles and 2 doubles, with 2 being a single wall and 2 being a double wall. Double wall baskets are really good if you're using pre-ground coffee or coffee that's not particularly fresh. Because we're using whole bean and very fresh coffee, we're going to be relying on our single wall baskets. The Oracle today is a 58 ml portafilter, which means that we could fit about 20 to 22 grams inside of this basket for a double shot. The Express and the Impress machines have a 54 ml basket, which means we can only fit about 16 to 18 grams in there. When talking about dose, you should also know what your yield is. Your yield is the amount of espresso that you're going to be making. For a long time, we used to use milliliters to measure this. This is not a very accurate way of measuring the amount of liquid that you're producing, because depending on how fresh or how old your coffee is, you get 2 different amounts of crema and liquid black espresso underneath. These days, we use scales to measure, once again in grams, the amount of liquid that we're actually extracting out of the machine. The relationship between your dose and your yield is called your brew ratio. So for instance, a 20 gram dose and a 40 gram yield is a 1:2 ratio. Now that would be classically known as an espresso. A ristretto, which means restricted, is a 1:1 relationship between dose and yield. A lungo is a 1:3, which is a lot more of a diluted shot. For Elevate, the blend we're using today, we're going to be deviating from this rule very slightly. Today we're going to be using a ratio of 1 to 1.6, which means for a dose of 22 grams, we're going to be extracting 36 grams of espresso, and for a dose of 18 grams, we're going to be extracting about 28 to 30 grams of espresso. So we've decided on this ratio based upon what we call the taste experience. Every single coffee you've ever had and that you've ever made will have some level of acidity, sweetness, and bitterness within it. It's preferable to keep your amount of bitterness as low as possible. So today we're trying to minimize that by using our recipe. Sweetness, on the other hand, is the thing that we're trying to squeeze as much as we can out of this coffee. So our preferred level of sweetness is high. Acidity is a tricky thing to talk about. Acid is neither positive nor negative. A negative acidity would be sourness, or intensity and sharpness. A positive acidity, however, is liveliness and brightness and fruitiness and all those other amazing things that specialty coffee can bring. So for today, we're aiming for balance in our acidity. For that, we need to deviate away from our 1:2 standard recipe to this 1 to 1.6 recipe today. So now we've explored our dose and our yield, let's talk about our grind size. The grind size will influence the speed at which the water travels through the coffee. Shots that run really fast often tend to taste quite sour and bright. As the brew time increases, you get more and more sweetness, which is what our ideal is. You let the brew time go for too long and you start to get bitterness. All of this is in direct correlation to the size of the particles that you create. That's some pretty complex language. We're talking about grind size here. So the coarser you go on your grinder, the faster the flow of water, the faster your brew time. The finer you go, the slower the flow of water, the longer your brew time. For today, we're going to be aiming for a 27-second brew time, which is quite specific. It's okay to go a few seconds up or down, but know that the coffee will taste best at that 27-second brew time. The next variable to discuss is temperature. Generally speaking, the hotter our water, the more coffee flavor we're going to be extracting. But not all of that coffee flavor is good. We're trying to aim for really, really sweet coffee, but if you go too hot, you'll start to extract a lot of the bitter compounds in the coffee as well. You go too cold, you get a lot of acidity and a lot of sourness as well. For today, I'm aiming to have about 94 to 95 degrees inside my machine to make my best coffee. This is how to control it on each of our machines today. On the Oracle today, if we hit the cog in the corner and come down to temperature settings, as you can see, we're sitting here at 95 degrees. Over on the Barista Impress Touch, we're going to hit the cog in the corner, scroll down until we reach the brew temperature, and moving away from default, we're going up 2 notches to hotter number 2 and hit save. Here on the Barista Express, We're going to start with the machine off. We're going to hold down the program button as we turn the machine back on, and then hit the double shot button twice. Once the machine reboots, we're sitting at 95 degrees. Our final variable is pressure. For the longest time in espresso, we've been extracting at 9 bars, and this is generally the best setting for pressure on any espresso machine. Your Oracle and your Impress are going to control this internally, so you don't have to worry about it. On the Express, you can read the pressure on the gauge on the front of the machine. When your grind size is correct, you should be sitting somewhere in the middle of this gauge, around 9 bars. If your grind size is a little bit too fine, your gauge will overshoot, and if it's a little bit too coarse, it shall undershoot. So paying attention to your pressure is making sure that you have your grind size set correctly. All right, that's enough talking. Let's get to making some coffee. Let's begin on our Barista Express. Let's explore some of the equipment we're going to be using today to make great espresso. I have a set of scales that I'll be using to measure my dose. I have a smaller set of scales I'll be using to measure my yield as well. This is not necessary, but I have a spare set on hand that I'll be using today. I also have a spoon that I can use to adjust my dose should it not be correct. I have my milk jug that I'll be using to spin and steam my milk, a series of cups to pour into, as well as a cloth for the bench and a cloth for the steam wand. Let's begin by removing our portafilter from the machine, making sure that it's nice and clean and dry before we begin. The Barista Express comes with a really great tool, which is this grinds funnel that locks onto the top of your portafilter to make sure that no coffee spills out of your basket onto your drip tray. We're going to place the portafilter on top of our scales and zero our scales to the weight of our portafilter. Our grinder is right here, in which we'll be sliding our portafilter into to begin grinding. It's important to have our filter size button set to double and our grind amount sitting around halfway. We can adjust this later to get slightly more or slightly less coffee out. Once you have ground your coffee, take your portafilter and place it on the scales to make sure you have the right amount of coffee. I have 18.8 grams here. I only want 18 grams. So using my spoon, I'm going to reduce this back down to the correct amount. Looks pretty good to me. The next step is distribution. Distribution is about manipulating our bed of coffee to be nice and level and flat before we tamp it. If we have sections where there is more coffee and less coffee, the water won't travel through in a very even way, and we're going to be extracting our coffee unevenly. That leads to flavors that are quite muddy, you get some acidity, and you get some bitterness all within the one shot. Using this dosing funnel is a very easy way to control our distribution. I can give it a bit of a shake, or even a bit of a tap, but once everything is sitting really nice and level, I can remove the dosing funnel and get to tamping. The Barista Express comes with a built-in tamper, magically attached right there. Tamping presses out all of the air pockets between the particles of coffee, making sure that the water travels through the coffee itself and not channeling around the coffee. We're going to set up the edge of our portafilter on the edge of our bench, slowly lower the tamper into the bed of coffee, but don't compress just yet. Before we compress down, we want to make sure our tamper is as level as it possibly can be, so that all we need to think about is pressing straight down. The best way to tamp is to have your palm sitting on top of the tamper itself and a couple of fingers resting on the head of the tamper to spread your weight out evenly over the tamper as you tamp. It's best to have your elbow directly above the tamper and your arm in a right angle. This way, the weight that you press down into the portafilter travels through your arm into your shoulder and is a much more ergonomic way of tamping. Once I'm happy with how level this tamp is, I'm going to just lean my weight into the portafilter until I feel the coffee become solid. And all we need to do is remove the tamper, lock it back in its place on the machine. Now that our puck is prepped and ready to go, we can begin to brew. I'm going to grab my smaller set of scales and place them on the drip tray. I'm going to then grab a cup and place it on top of the scales and zero the weight of the cup so I can then measure my yield or the amount of espresso in grams that I'm producing. This scale also has a built-in timer, which helps me time the shot that I'm pulling. If you're not using a set of scales, use your phone timer from the point that you press the button until the shot finishes. that will be your brew time. This is really important to focus on later. I'm going to hit the double shot button and slide my cup across. That shot just there ran a little bit fast. That tells me that my grind size isn't quite where it needs to be to produce the kind of coffee that I want to make today. So I'm going to make an adjustment finer by 1 setting on my grind size to achieve a slower flow of water through the puck and therefore a longer brew time. You might notice as well that my yield is about 35 grams. This is a little bit too long for this given dose. What we're really looking for is around 28 to 30 grams. Adjusting our grind size finer will shorten this yield very slightly, but there is a chance that we might need to program our yield on our machine as well. So over on the side of the espresso machine, we have our grind size adjustment. As you can see, coarser means faster extraction and finer means slower extraction. So we want to adjust our grind size finer to get our brew time a bit closer to 27 seconds. 1 click of our adjustment should do it. We're currently set to number 5. We're going to go 1 click over to number 4 just there, and we should be pretty much good to go. As you can see, this one is flowing like warm honey, which is what we're looking for. The shot ran for 29 seconds with a yield of pretty much 29 grams. I'm pretty happy with that. So now that we've created a delicious espresso, let's chuck some milk in this and turn it into a latte. I'm going to start with my full cream milk and fill up my milk jug about halfway full. Before I begin, I need to purge my steam wand of any water. Because this is a single boiler machine, we need to switch it from brew mode into steam mode. So on the side here, we're just going to switch this over to the little steam purge function. Once the water has stopped spurting out and the steam starts to come on, you can switch it back to its standby mode again and we can get ready to steam our jug of milk. Positioning is really important when steaming milk. So begin by pulling out your steam wand. It helps to have it slightly on a sideways angle to keep it away from the portafilter. We're going to start by locking our steam wand into the spout of our jug with the tip of the steam wand directly in the center of the milk. We're going to angle the handle of the jug towards the ground so that we can now see a bit further into the milk, and angle the jug very slightly sideways, just like so. The tip of the steam wand should be just submerged beneath the surface of the milk. When I'm happy with this position, I will turn on the steam and wait for the sound to begin. Once the milk begins to bubble and squeal, we're going to drop the jug down lower and begin making bubbles. As you can see, they are forming on the surface. We're going to gently aerate for a few seconds and then submerge the tip underneath the surface very slightly, which will stop the aeration process and begin to grab any of the bubbles that we've created and mix them through. It's really important to create all of your bubbles and all of your air in the beginning and mix them in second. If you accidentally add more air in the later stages of the steaming process, you won't have a huge amount of time left to mix them through. So always begin with bubble creation and then mixing following that. As you can see, the milk is swirling really nicely in a nice whirlpool thanks to the angles that we're holding our jug on, and all the bubbles have begun to disappear. Using my hand, I can feel the temperature of the milk. It is getting very slightly hot to the touch, so I shall remove my hand and count to about 5 seconds before switching off the steam. Moving quite quickly, we're going to remove the jug. I need to purge my steam wand, wipe the steam wand, and begin our pour. So let's start by swirling our espresso. This will even out the thickness and the color in the crema. With my milk nice and silky, I'm going to pour right into the center of the cup as slowly and as gently as I possibly can. Holding still for a few seconds and then slowly moving around to cover up any of the white little blotches of milk that show through. I'm going to stop halfway full, big angle on the cup, and drop my tip of the jug straight into the center of the cup, increasing the flow as I level out and pulling through to create a heart. So now let's make a coffee using the Barista Impress Touch. This machine assists some of your abilities so that you can make better coffee first thing in the morning without having to think too hard. Let's get cracking. So the equipment we'll need to make an espresso on the Barista Impress: a set of scales to measure our yield a little bit later on, a milk jug to steam our milk, and a set of cloths, one for the bench and one for the wand. We're going to begin by scrolling over to our latte button and hitting the touchscreen to enter into this setting. This here is a default program to make one latte. We can go in and adjust these details very finely in just a minute. So as you can see, our grind size is currently set at number 10. We can adjust that using the dial on the side of the machine. Our basket here, we're going to select double because that is the size of basket that we're working with. The next setting along here controls our yield, or how short or long our shot is. Right now, we can choose between double, single, lungo, and a custom number as well. Over here is our milk settings. We can select our temperature, which we're going to be setting it to 60 degrees today, as well as our froth number and the type of milk we're working with. So right now we're working with dairy, and I'm actually going to adjust this froth depth to number 4, so slightly thinner than the default. From here, we can get started in pulling a shot. Begin by removing the portafilter, making sure that it's nice and dry and clean, and I'm going to push it into the grinder just here. On the screen here, I'm going to hit the little portafilter icon to begin the grinding process. So the grinding chamber has contained all of the grounds within the basket. It keeps things very neat and very clean. I believe that it's giving me 18 grams. Using the tamper lever here, I'm going to slowly press down, which is going to compress the coffee, and pull my portafilter out. And as you can see, the coffee is very neatly tamped. We'll wipe off some of this excess coffee, but I'm happy to lock this in and start brewing. So now I'm going to lock my portafilter into my machine. I'm going to grab my scale and my cup and place them underneath the portafilter spouts and zero off the cup to the scale. I'm going to then hit this middle button here to begin the brewing process. As you can see, we have a very slow, tight flow of espresso coming out of this machine. Even before the shot finishes, I can tell that it's running a little bit too fine. So we will need to make an adjustment on our grind size in just a second. So 39 seconds, not great. We need to compensate with a slightly coarser grind size to speed up that flow of liquid through the puck of coffee. Over here on the side, we have our grind size adjustment dial. We can turn it towards us to get a finer or a slower extraction. What we want to do is turn it away from us to achieve a coarser and a faster brew of water through our espresso puck. So as I rotate this on the screen, the numbers will increase as well. We're going from 10 up to 11, up to 12. I think 2 notches of adjustment should do the trick in this case. So I'm going to pull another shot and see if that was an effective change. Placing the portafilter back into the grinding chamber and hitting the icon on the screen. Using the lever to tamp the coffee down nice and flat. You can see this time that the espresso is no longer dripping, it's flowing nice and steadily. I feel pretty confident about this shot running well. So as you can see, our yield has nailed exactly 30 grams, which is exactly what I was looking for. If I'm finding that it's not quite enough liquid, or maybe it's too much liquid, go up here on the screen, you can hit your yield button, come along and press the button for custom, and increase your yield slightly or decrease it if you need to as well. But where we're at right now for double is right on the money. So let's fill up our milk jug. We're going to fill it up about halfway, just below the little maximum mark on the side of the jug. So on this machine, I have the option to steam manually or automatically. If I wanted to steam manually, I would pull the steam wand out, get my jug into position, and turn on and off the steam wand using the screen. But I think for this one, we're going to lower the steam wand into the jug and place the jug on the drip tray with the base of the jug sitting on top of the little temperature probe on the drip tray. We are sitting at 60 degrees on the dial. Steam number is number 4, and the indication there is telling us that we are steaming for dairy milk. Now the standard in many cafes is 65 degrees. We prefer to steam to 60. We believe that 60 degrees not only tastes better, but gives you a better chance at performing really, really great latte art. On a molecular level, to get a little bit nerdy here, 60 degrees will limit the caramelization of the sugars within the milk, and it keeps the protein structure bonded together, helping the milk remain nice and creamy and fluffy so that it's easy to pour. To begin, I'm going to hit the picture of the pitcher, and away it's going to go. So the milk is ready to go. I'm going to remove the steam wand from the center of the milk, give it a nice wipe with the cloth, push it back down, and it's automatically going to purge for me. The milk is super shiny, super silky, and exactly the temperature that I asked for. Pouring directly into the middle of the cup, nice and slow, holding still for a couple of seconds, and then slowly move the jug around to paint away any of the inconsistencies in the crema. Stopping at about 3/4 full, big angle on the cup. We're going to drop the tip of our jug right in the middle of our cup and place a few different blobs of foam and then pull through to create a tulip. We should be left with about 1 centimeter of foam on top of this latte, and our very gentle pouring in the beginning has retained all of our crema, really increasing the depth of flavor that we're going to be getting from this coffee. So that was our look at the Impress Touch. Let's have a squiz over at the Oracle Jet, which is an entirely automatic machine. So a lot of the functionality is being handled by the machine, giving us a lot more time to focus on anything else. So the equipment we're going to be using right now is a set of scales to measure our yield, a knockbox to knock out any spent pucks. I'm going to be making a flat white here today, so I've got a slightly bigger ceramic cup and a couple of cloths, one for the bench, one for the steam wand. I'm going to start by removing my portafilter, making sure it's nice and clean and dry. So because this machine is fully automatic, I'm going to rely on its ability to dose and tamp for me. So here I am in my flat white profile. You can see my grind size is 14. My yield right now is set to the double shot size, and my milk steaming section is ready to be adjusted as well. Dairy milk for today. Temperature, I'm going to drop this down to 60 degrees. I'll explain why in just a minute. And the microfoam level, number 4, should be just fine for us today. So let's lock our portafilter into the grinding chamber, pulling it all the way to the right to begin grinding. So as you can hear, the shot is now finished, dosed very accurately, distributed, and tamped incredibly evenly as well, as you can see. I'm going to lock the portafilter into the machine, tighten it, chuck my cup on top of my scales and zero off, and hit the cup in the middle of the screen to begin the brewing process. So our shot time ran for 25 seconds, and my yield is just over 50 grams. Now, the shot time wasn't enough brew time for the coffee I'm using today. I'm looking for 27 seconds, so I need to adjust my grind size. So here on the side of the machine, we have our grind size adjustment dial. If I roll it towards myself, I will be increasing the grind size. I'll be making it coarser, which will speed up the flow of liquid through the coffee. What I'm looking for is a slightly finer grind size. So I'm going to roll this forwards, and we were only at 25 seconds. 27 seconds isn't really that far away, so we're just going to go one notch finer as indicated by the screen. So now that we've adjusted our grind size, let's run another shot and give it another try. I'm just going to knock out my puck. Make sure my portafilter is nice and clean and dry. Back into the grinder we go, pulling it tight to begin the grinding process. So the other thing that we needed to rectify here was that our yield was a little bit too long. So by pressing the button below the glass on the screen, I can come along to custom. So sliding the dial down a little bit shorter should give us the yield that we're looking for. So we fixed our grind size, we fixed our yield. Let's lock our portafilter into the machine, chuck down the scales and the cup on top, tearing it off and hitting the brew button in the middle of the screen. So as you can see, the yield is now pretty much on 36 grams, which is exactly what I was looking for. Now to steam some milk. So let's start by filling up our milk jug. We're going to fill it up around halfway. Now we're going to utilize the automatic steaming function on this machine because it works really, really well. So on the screen here, as you can see, we have our dairy milk set to 60 degrees. The microfoam number is number 4, which usually works pretty well for a flat white. All we're going to do is bring out the steam wand, put our jug underneath and lock it down nice and straight with the jug sitting on the drip tray itself. I'm then going to hit the little picture of the pitcher and begin the steaming process. So now our milk is ready to go. I'm going to wipe my steam wand. It will automatically purge into the drip tray. Give a little tap to my jug to pop a couple of bubbles, and a quick swirl will make it nice and silky. Swirling my espresso will even out the color and the thickness of the crema, and I can begin my pour. Pouring straight into the middle of the cup, as gently and as slowly as you can possibly make it. Slow movements to paint away any of the inconsistent colors that show through, and then begin your pour. Get your tip really close to the surface. Not my best one in the world, but there you go. So now you know how best to use these machines specifically to brew our coffee. What we need to focus on now is some cleaning. Not a particularly fun thing, but very necessary. We're going to be doing this on our Barista Express today. The same concepts apply to all the other machines as well. You can read your manuals for a few more specifics. First of all, if I remove this portafilter, there is still a puck in here from earlier. It's really important to knock these pucks out because if you let them dry, they get really hard and start sticking to your portafilter. So with a little bit of effort, you can remove your basket from your portafilter, and as you can see, it's pretty grotty on the bottom right there. So I might grab a cloth and give this a good wipe. I might also take my portafilter to the sink to rinse out inside and on the bottom as well. This is something you can do every day after you finish making your coffee, so you're ready to go for tomorrow. So the next step is talking about how we store our coffee. The coffee will remain fresher for longer if it's in an airtight container, like the Breville canister, or inside the bag that has been rolled down very tightly. It is okay to keep the coffee in the hopper as it is right now. It should last for about a week or so, so try and limit the amount of coffee that you put in the hopper so that you're not leaving it there for too long. If you want to remove the coffee from the hopper, remove the lid, turn the little notch in the middle so that the grinder locks, And from here we can lift off the hopper and place the beans somewhere else overnight. The next few things we're going to talk about are things that you can do at a minimum once a week, if not a few times a week as well. There's no limit to cleaning. There's no such thing as too clean. Your machine will come with some pieces of equipment that you can use to clean your machine more effectively. Pulling out the drip tray will gain access to the little hatch at the back. From there we can look at the things that we have in here. We have a descaling formulation, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have a few cleaning tablets that we're going to be using in just a moment. We have a brush and a set of pins to help clean out your grinders and your steam wand tip. And the rubber gasket that you will use to backflush your machine. So we've talked about emptying the portafilter every day. We've talked about emptying the grinder as you see fit. The next thing to talk about is emptying the water out of our drip tray. So after every extraction, some water and some steam and some milk will collect in the tray itself. There's a little indicator here that shows that my drip tray is very full of water. I can pull out my drip tray, take it to the sink, empty this water, and rinse it clean. So next, I want to demonstrate how to backflush this espresso machine. Backflushing is something you should do a couple of times a week. I would recommend doing it a few times with just water and maybe once a week with chemical. So here I have the tablets that I use to chemically backflush this machine and the rubber gasket that I use to keep the water inside the basket. I'm going to remove the portafilter, place the gasket inside the basket. I'm then going to grab out one of my chemical tablets and place it inside of the gasket, locking it into the espresso machine. And in order to start the cleaning function of this machine, we're going to turn the machine off, press and hold the single shot and the double shot button as we turn the machine on, and hold all the buttons together for 3 seconds. This has begun the backflushing cycle, which will last for about 5 minutes. So we can use this tool that Breville have provided to clean our steam wand. Using the piece of wire here, you can poke it up the end of the steam wand to loosen any milk that has made its way into the steam wand tip itself. If you need to do a thorough clean, you can use the hole in the middle of this tool to loosen and unscrew the tip and then soak it. What I will say is, if you are properly wiping and cleaning your wand after every time you steam a jug of milk, there really shouldn't need to be much intervention done in terms of cleaning every week or so. Now we can talk about some of the things that we want to do a little less regularly, every month or every 2 to 3 months. One of those is cleaning the burrs of the grinder itself. So I'm going to remove the lid of the hopper, lock my hopper shut, and remove it from the grinder. So I can loosen the top burr by lifting up this metal wire and rotating it from lock to align, just like that, and pulling it straight out. And from here, using my brush provided by Breville to scrape off and clean any of the grinds that are stuck to the grinder, and also get in there, clean out any of the coffee that's built up on the bottom burr itself. A really handy tool at this point would be to use a vacuum cleaner to suck out any of this leftover coffee. But when you're happy and it's nice and clean, you can place your top burr back in with the arrow pointing towards a line and then rotating it around until the lock position, and you're good to go. Placing the hopper back in the top, rotating it from locked to open, and chucking the lid back on the top. The next two things to talk about are in relation to minerality and water, which is a pretty dense topic. We're going to be talking about descaling our machine and replacing the water filter in the back. So reaching over the back here, lifting up the handle, I can take out my water reservoir. You can see it is about half full. I would normally want to empty this for this exercise. Right here is my water filter. This little cartridge in here generally needs to be replaced every 3 to 6 months, depending on the minerality or the hardness of the water in your area. Here in Melbourne, we haven't got a huge amount of minerality in our water, so I don't need to replace this as often. In a place like Brisbane or Adelaide, where your water hardness is quite intense, you will need to replace this probably every 3 to 4 months. You can use this little date wheel up the top to indicate when your next change needs to occur. So you can refer to your manual if you need a little bit more guidance on how to do this. Finally, we're going to talk about descaling. So from time to time, your machine will indicate to you, using the little light just here, that you'll need to descale your machine. This is to make sure that any mineral buildup inside the machine itself can be dissolved and dispersed before reusing your machine. This is something that would occur every few months, maybe every 6 months or so. Breville have provided you with this descaling solution. So what you want to do is place the powder into the back tank and follow the instructions on the back of the packet to finish descaling. So thank you for joining us today to explore this wonderful range of coffee from Veneziano alongside these amazing machines from Breville as well. If you'd like to find out some more information about us, feel free to jump onto our socials on Instagram. Get in touch with us if you want to learn a little bit more. Come visit us in our stores Australia-wide and even join me for a training session sometime in the future. Happy brewing.